It was the third month of the interspecies cultural exchange program at the Galactic Academy when Zelen, an excitable student from the crystalline world of Varlix, pitched the idea, a study of human pain tolerance. The proposal sent ripples of interest and mild horror through the lecture hall. Humans, with their infamous endurance and resilience, were a source of both fascination and dread among the Academy's alien students. The project was approved under strict supervision, and the task fell to an interspecies research group led by Zelen. For their human participant, they chose a man named Daniel Hughes. Daniel was an unassuming fellow, tall but not imposing, with a calm demeanor that often masked his sharp wit. He'd volunteered for the program out of sheer curiosity, hoping to experience alien cultures and make a good impression on behalf of Earth. When approached for the study, Daniel had hesitated. The word pain gave him pause, but he agreed, reasoning that he'd survived enough rough patches in life to handle whatever they threw at him. The first meeting between Daniel and the research team took place in a pristine white lab filled with softly humming equipment. Zelen, whose shimmering translucent body refracted light in mesmerizing patterns, greeted Daniel with unrestrained enthusiasm. "We have heard legends of your species' resilience," Zelen said, their voice a melodic hum. "You can endure unimaginable physical duress without perishing. We wish to understand the limits of this ability." Daniel quirked an eyebrow. "Legends, huh? Well, I don't know about legends, but we've got some tough cookies back home. What exactly do you have in mind?" The team explained the parameters, a series of controlled, non-lethal experiments designed to measure pain tolerance across physical, chemical, and emotional stimuli. Safety precautions were emphasized, and Daniel was promised the option to withdraw at any time. He nodded thoughtfully, his curiosity outweighing his apprehension. The first experiment was relatively simple exposure to low-level physical stimuli. They began with mild pinches delivered by a robotic arm. Zelen and the others watched in fascination as Daniel didn't flinch. The pinches increased in intensity until the machine delivered what would have been excruciating to most species. Daniel winced but stayed composed. "Are we done with the warm-up?" he asked, his tone dry. Zelen exchanged glances with their colleagues, their bioluminescence dimming in collective amazement. Next came exposure to heat and cold. Daniel's hand was placed on a surface that alternated between sub-zero temperatures and scorching heat, calibrated to avoid permanent damage. Most species would have yelped or withdrawn within seconds. Daniel held his hand there, his jaw tightening only slightly. "Ice fishing in Minnesota feels worse than this," he muttered. The aliens took frantic notes, their equivalent of eyebrows knitting together in concern. Murmurs passed through the group as they speculated whether the human nervous system was uniquely primitive or simply unparalleled in fortitude. "Are you sure this is ethical?" whispered Calyx, a gelatinous being who served as the group's medic. Their translucent blue form quivered with unease. "He seems to be suffering." Daniel overheard and chuckled. "Trust me, I've been through worse. Keep going." The experiments escalated. Daniel was exposed to mild electric shocks, tested for his response to irritating substances on his skin, and even subjected to auditory and visual overstimulation. He endured it all with a mix of stoicism and sardonic humor. It wasn't until the emotional pain tests that the cracks began to show. The team used holographic simulations to recreate scenarios designed to evoke feelings of loss, rejection, or fear. Daniel's eyes hardened as he watched the projections, but his breathing remained steady. "Do you want to talk about what you're feeling?" Zelen asked, their luminescent body pulsating with genuine concern. Daniel shook his head. "Just memories, that's all. You can move on to the next one." By the end of the first round of experiments, the alien team was both awestruck and unsettled. Zelen called for a recess, allowing Daniel to rest and the team to regroup. In the break room, Zelen confronted Calyx. "Are you certain he's unharmed?" Calyx emitted a nervous gurgle. "Physically, yes, but emotionally. I don't understand how he maintains such composure. It's as if his species has evolved to endure suffering as a way of life." Zelen's light flickered uneasily. "I fear we may be pushing him too far." Meanwhile, Daniel was in his assigned quarters, stretching and massaging his shoulders. The experiments had been draining, but he found himself oddly amused by the aliens' reactions. They genuinely seemed more distressed by his pain than he was. When the second round began, the intensity increased. This time, the physical tests involved simulated injuries, cuts, and bruises applied through advanced holography that replicated the sensation without causing real harm. Daniel's responses were measured and calm. He gritted his teeth but never cried out. The aliens were beginning to show signs of wear. Calyx frequently excused themselves to the corner, their gelatinous form quivering in distress. Zellen's colors dimmed more often than not. The breaking point came during the final test of the second round, a simulation of a car crash. Daniel sat in a reinforced pod that recreated the force and chaos of the impact. When the pod opened, he stumbled out, battered but standing. "Well, that was a ride," he said, brushing imaginary dust off his shirt. Zellen stared at him in disbelief. "How are you still functioning?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Humans are stubborn. It's kind of our thing." By the third round, it wasn't Daniel who was faltering, it was the research team. Calyx refused to participate, their translucent body dim and deflated. Zellen pushed on, though their light had taken on a permanent dimness, a stark contrast to their usual brilliance. The final set of experiments involved chemical stimuli designed to simulate internal pain, headaches, nausea, and muscle aches. Daniel endured each one with an almost casual air, his wit as sharp as ever. When it was all over, the team convened in the observation chamber to discuss their findings. Zellen's voice was tinged with something akin to despair. "We have learned much about human pain tolerance, but at what cost? This cannot be normal." Daniel joined them, still rubbing his temples from the simulated migraine. "You're right. It's not normal. But life isn't exactly kind. Humans adapt, we push through, and we survive. It's just who we are." The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. For the first time, the aliens truly grasped the depth of humanity's resilience and the toll it exacted. Calyx finally spoke, their voice trembling. "Your species is terrifying." Daniel laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "We get that a lot." The research team reconvened the following morning, their collective mood a mix of awe and trepidation. Zellen's crystalline body flickered faintly, an uncharacteristic lack of brilliance that suggested stress. Calyx remained visibly deflated, their gelatinous form drooping like a wilted plant. Despite their exhaustion, none of them could deny the scientific imperative to continue. The potential insights into human physiology and psychology were too significant to abandon. Daniel arrived punctually, carrying a steaming mug of something that smelled suspiciously like coffee. He seemed well rested, his demeanor as relaxed as if he were heading into a casual meeting rather than more grueling tests. The team exchanged uneasy glances as he sipped his drink, apparently unfazed by the previous day's trials. "Good morning," he said cheerfully. "What's on the agenda? More pain, I assume?" Zellen hesitated, their shimmering surface flickering in a way that suggested embarrassment. "We have prepared the next phase, but we can adjust the parameters if necessary." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Why? You think I'm going to tap out?" "No," Zellen admitted. "But some among us believe the tests are excessive." Daniel chuckled softly. "You guys really aren't used to humans, are you? Let's keep going." "I can handle it." The third phase focused on psychological resilience. The aliens had been particularly curious about how humans processed prolonged stress and mental anguish, especially under conditions designed to test emotional endurance. Daniel's confidence in volunteering for these trials unnerved the team. To them, it seemed that he was either recklessly courageous or profoundly naive about what was to come. The first test involved isolation. Daniel was placed in a sensory deprivation chamber, where he floated in a perfectly silent, pitch-black tank. For hours, the aliens monitored his vitals, expecting his mind to unravel in the absence of sensory input. Instead, Daniel emerged looking refreshed. "Honestly," he said, toweling off the saline solution from his skin, "that was one of the most relaxing experiences I've had in months. Do you guys offer this as a spa service? Zellen's glow dimmed further. Relaxing? Most species would experience profound disorientation, if not outright psychological collapse. Yeah, well, I'm not most species, Daniel replied with a grin. Humans are used to dealing with chaos. A little peace and quiet is kind of nice for a change. The next test involved simulated social rejection. Holographic recreations of people, friends, family, colleagues delivered harsh criticisms and rejections designed to mimic real-world scenarios. Daniel listened with a stoic expression, his body language calm and measured. When the simulation ended, Zellen approached cautiously. Are you? All right. Daniel nodded. Oh, I'm fine. Sticks and stones, you know. But these scenarios were designed to provoke profound emotional distress. Daniel shrugged. I've had my share of tough conversations. You learn to brush it off. Life's too short to dwell on what people think of you. The aliens were growing visibly uneasy. Calyx, who had initially tried to avoid further involvement, couldn't suppress their concern any longer. They approached Daniel during a break, their gelatinous form trembling slightly. Human, they began hesitantly. Does this not trouble you? To endure such things without reaction? It seems unnatural. Daniel's expression softened. It's not that it doesn't trouble me. I just don't let it consume me. We've all got our ways of coping. Mine is to keep moving forward. Calyx absorbed this in silence, their form rippling like a pond disturbed by a pebble. Daniel's resilience was not only confounding but also quietly unsettling. The final psychological test was a simulated hostage scenario. Daniel was placed in a virtual environment where he had to make difficult moral choices under extreme pressure. The holograms depicted innocent bystanders in peril, forcing him to weigh the value of individual lives against the greater good. The team watched anxiously as he navigated the scenarios with grim determination. When the simulation ended, Daniel sat silently for a moment, his jaw clenched. Zellen hesitated before approaching. That was difficult, they said cautiously. You performed remarkably, but your stress indicators were significant. Are you sure you wish to continue? Daniel exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing. That was rough, he admitted. But yeah, I'm fine. You guys still have more tests planned, right? Zellen's colors dimmed further. Yes, but... Then let's get to it, Daniel interrupted, his tone firm. If I'm going to do this, I want to see it through. The fourth and final phase of the study focused on long-term endurance. The aliens were curious about how humans handled cumulative stress and physical strain over an extended period. Daniel was subjected to a continuous series of challenges, including sleep deprivation, physical exertion, and environmental discomfort. At first, he managed with his usual stoicism. He joked with the team during breaks, his humor a strange counterpoint to the grueling nature of the tests. But as the hours stretched into days, even Daniel's resilience began to waver. He moved slower, his responses less sharp. The circles under his eyes grew darker, and his voice carried an edge of fatigue. The aliens were on edge. Zellen, in particular, had grown deeply attached to their human participant. They frequently checked on him, their light flickering with concern. You don't have to continue, Zellen said one evening as Daniel sat slumped in a chair, rubbing his temples. We have gathered more than enough data. No one would think less of you for stopping. Daniel looked up, his expression serious. I appreciate that, Zellen. But this isn't just about the data. I signed up to show what humans are capable of. I don't want to leave this half-finished. Calyx, who had been lurking nearby, couldn't hold back any longer. But at what cost? Your body, your mind, they're not invincible. You're pushing yourself beyond what is reasonable. Daniel smiled faintly. That's kind of the point. Humans aren't invincible, but we keep going anyway. That's what makes us who we are. The aliens fell silent, their discomfort palpable. For all their advanced knowledge and technology, they struggled to comprehend the depths of human determination. To them, Daniel's willingness to endure seemed almost pathological, a dangerous combination of stubbornness and pride. As the final test concluded, Daniel staggered out of the simulation chamber, his body visibly shaking from exhaustion. Zelen and Calix rushed to his side, supporting him as he collapsed into a chair. "It's done," Zelen said softly, their glow muted. "You've proven more than we ever imagined." Daniel managed a tired smile. "Good. Now, can I get some coffee?" The study's results were presented to the Galactic Academy with great fanfare. The findings were groundbreaking, offering unprecedented insights into human physiology and psychology, but the research team's presentation was tinged with unease. They described Daniel's resilience with both admiration and trepidation, emphasizing the extraordinary toll it took on him. For their part, the alien students who had initially been so eager to study human pain tolerance walked away pale and shaken. They regarded humans with a new mix of respect and weariness, deeply unsettled by the sheer intensity of their will to endure. As for Daniel, he returned to Earth with a newfound appreciation for his species' reputation. He carried a small token from Zelen, a glowing crystal that pulsed softly with light. It was a reminder of the bond they had formed, forged in the crucible of their shared experiences. "I hope I didn't scare them off too much," he said with a wry grin when he recounted the story to his friends. "But hey, if nothing else, they'll think twice before underestimating a human." After the presentation at the Galactic Academy, the aftermath of the study rippled through the wider student body. While the research team grappled with what they had witnessed, the broader Academy population buzzed with a mix of curiosity and unease. Rumors about Daniel had spread like wildfire. Whispers of his seemingly indomitable endurance and stoic demeanor turned him into a reluctant celebrity among the interspecies students. Daniel, meanwhile, had mixed feelings about his newfound fame. While he appreciated the respect, he wasn't particularly fond of the constant stares or the occasional probing questions from students who wanted to dissect his psyche outside the lab. He had hoped the conclusion of the experiments would mark the end of his spotlight, but instead, it seemed to have amplified his status. The most significant challenge came when other alien researchers approached him for follow-up studies. "We promise these tests are purely observational," said Drymel, a wiry insectoid with multifaceted eyes. Their voice clicked as they spoke, conveying a mix of deference and eagerness. "We've heard about your resilience, and we wish to conduct comparative studies between humans and other species." Completely harmless, of course. Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, I get that you're all curious, but I didn't sign up to be a permanent lab rat. I appreciate the interest, but I've had enough tests to last a lifetime." Drymel hesitated, their antennae drooping. "We understand, but your contributions to interspecies understanding could be unparalleled." Daniel offered a small, strained smile. "Maybe next time. I think I've done my part for now." Meanwhile, Zelen and the rest of the original research team found themselves struggling to process the aftermath of their study. While their findings had been celebrated, the emotional toll it had taken on them lingered. Zelen, in particular, found themselves replaying the moments of Daniel's trials in their mind, questioning the ethical boundaries of their work. During a quiet moment in the Academy gardens, Zelen confided in Calix. "Do you think we went too far?" Calix, whose form had regained some of its usual vibrancy, rippled thoughtfully. "I've replayed those tests in my mind countless times. I still can't fathom how he endured so much. But more than that, I can't shake the feeling that we saw only the surface of what humans are capable of." Zelen's crystalline surface dimmed. "That's what frightens me. If this is what they can endure voluntarily, what does it say about the challenges their species faces daily, or the lengths they might go to in truly dire circumstances?" Calix's gelatinous form shuddered. Perhaps it's best not to dwell too deeply on such questions. Despite his initial reluctance, Daniel eventually agreed to attend a panel discussion hosted by the Academy. The event was meant to explore the broader implications of human resilience, with Daniel as the guest of honor. He sat on a stage surrounded by scientists, diplomats, and students from dozens of species, feeling acutely out of place. The discussion started cordially, with the moderators recounting the study's key findings. But as the session opened to questions, the tone shifted. Some audience members expressed admiration, while others voiced concerns about the potential dangers of such a hardy species. How does your species manage to maintain social cohesion? Ask a towering reptilian named Drakval, when individuals are capable of enduring so much. Wouldn't such endurance lead to recklessness or apathy toward others' suffering? Daniel leaned forward, choosing his words carefully. It's true that humans can endure a lot, but that doesn't mean we're indifferent to pain our own or others. In fact, I'd say it's the opposite. Our ability to endure comes from knowing how much it hurts and wanting to protect others from that. Pain teaches us empathy, not just toughness. The response drew murmurs of approval from some and skeptical clicks from others. Another student, a cephalopod like being named Vilrox, raised a tentacle. But doesn't this adaptability make your species dangerous? If you can survive anything, what limits your aggression? Daniel sighed, his expression turning serious. I won't lie, humans have done some pretty terrible things to each other. But resilience isn't just about surviving pain, it's about learning from it. We've learned that causing suffering doesn't solve problems. It just creates more. Most of us want to build a better world, not destroy it. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over the audience. Even the skeptics seemed to reconsider their assumptions. In the days that followed, Daniel found himself approached by a surprising number of students and faculty who wanted to express their gratitude, or, in some cases, apologize for their initial skepticism. He handled each interaction with his characteristic mix of humility and good humor, though the constant attention left him longing for the relative anonymity of Earth. One day, as he strolled through the Academy's arboretum, he encountered Zelen and Calix. The two researchers had been waiting for him, their unease evident even before they spoke. Daniel Zelen began hesitantly, their glow a pale shimmer. We've been reflecting on the study, and we wanted to say, we're sorry if we pushed you too far. Daniel stopped walking, studying their faces. You didn't push me. I chose to do this. But I appreciate the apology. Calix rippled anxiously. We didn't fully understand what we were asking of you. And now that we do, your willingness to endure it is even more remarkable and unsettling. Daniel smiled faintly. Unsettling, huh? That's one way to put it. Zelen's glow brightened slightly, a sign of tentative relief. We hope you'll remember us as colleagues, not just researchers. Daniel's smile widened. Of course. You might have put me through the ringer, but you're good people. I'd even call you friends. The two aliens exchanged glances, their respective forms rippling and glowing in ways that conveyed surprise and gratitude. For all their differences, they'd come to admire and respect Daniel not just for his resilience, but for the quiet strength of his character. Life at the Academy gradually returned to normal, though Daniel's legacy lingered in the form of a newfound respect for humanity. The study had left its mark on everyone involved, reshaping perceptions and fostering a deeper understanding of the human condition. For Daniel, the experience was both humbling and enlightening. He had come to the Academy expecting to learn about alien cultures, but in the end it was the aliens who had learned the most about him, and, by extension, about humanity. As he prepared to return to Earth, Daniel stood in the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. Zelen and Calix joined him, their presence a comforting reminder of the friendships he had forged. You know, Daniel said, breaking the silence, for all the pain and weirdness, I wouldn't trade this experience for anything. Zelen's glow brightened. Neither would we. Calix rippled in agreement. You've taught us more than we ever expected. About resilience, about hope, about humanity. Daniel chuckled softly. Well, if you ever visit Earth, you'll see we're not all that different. Just a little tougher than we look. As Daniel prepared for his departure from the Galactic Academy, he found himself reflecting on how much the experience had reshaped his understanding of both humanity and the wider universe. The Academy, with its sprawling halls filled with beings of every imaginable form, had been a crucible of discovery, not just for the aliens who studied him, but for Daniel himself. Still, he was eager to return to Earth, where the only pain tests involved stubbing a toe or biting into a piping hot slice of pizza. The day of his farewell was marked by a peculiar mix of solemnity and celebration. The Academy held a small gathering in his honor, with representatives from various species offering tokens of appreciation. Zelen and Calix, naturally, were at the forefront, their nervous energy betraying their reluctance to say goodbye. "This crystal," Zelen said, handing him a small, softly glowing shard, "is a symbol of friendship on Varlix. It's not customary to give it to those outside our species, but we believe you've earned it." Calix extended a container of shimmering blue liquid. "This is a restorative elixir from my world. It won't work on your physiology, but it's a gesture of gratitude. Perhaps you can use it as a conversation piece back home." Daniel accepted the gifts with a smile. "Thanks, you too. And don't worry, I won't forget you. It's not every day you get to become the intergalactic poster child for pain tolerance." The crowd laughed. Though the humor carried an undercurrent of admiration, many had come to see Daniel as a symbol of human resilience, a testament to the surprising complexity of a species that had initially been dismissed as primitive by some at the Academy. As the transport ship lifted off, Daniel watched the Academy shrink into the distance. The gleaming structure, perched on an asteroid orbiting a distant star, had been his home for months. Now, as it disappeared from view, he felt a pang of bittersweet emotion. He had gained more than knowledge during his time there. He had gained a new perspective. The journey back to Earth was uneventful at first, giving Daniel time to decompress. But as the ship approached Sol, an unexpected malfunction sent alarms blaring. The ship's main thrusters sputtered, and the lights flickered ominously. Daniel, already buckled into his seat, exchanged a wary glance with the alien pilot, a stoic amphibian named Relos. "This isn't standard procedure, right?" Daniel asked, gripping the armrests. "No," Relos replied calmly. "It appears our thrusters have been compromised. Emergency protocols are engaging." The ship began a slow, controlled descent toward an uninhabited moon orbiting Jupiter. The landing was rough but survivable, leaving the passengers shaken but unharmed. As the crew scrambled to assess the damage, Daniel stepped outside, marveling at the barren, icy landscape. "Well, this wasn't on the itinerary," he muttered to himself. Relos joined him, their gills flaring in agitation. "Repairs will take time. We have enough supplies, but it would be prudent to establish a perimeter in case of unexpected challenges." Daniel nodded, his pragmatic side kicking in. "Let me know how I can help." Over the next few days, Daniel's human adaptability proved invaluable. While the alien crew focused on repairing the thrusters, Daniel took charge of securing the area and maintaining morale. His ability to stay calm under pressure impressed even the most skeptical crew members. At one point, Relos approached him during a break. "You handle stress remarkably well," they said, their amphibious eyes narrowing in curiosity. "Do all humans possess this level of composure?" Daniel chuckled, leaning against a makeshift barricade. "Not all of us. But when you've been through enough tough situations, you learn how to keep your head straight. Panicking doesn't fix anything." Relos regarded him thoughtfully. "Your species is perplexing. Fragile, yet unyielding. It is a combination I do not fully understand." "Welcome to the club," Daniel replied with a grin. The ordeal on the moon lasted 4 days, during which Daniel's leadership and ingenuity proved crucial. When the ship was finally repaired, the crew insisted on celebrating their survival with a small feast. Daniel, exhausted but satisfied, accepted their gratitude with his trademark mix of humility and humor. As the ship resumed its course to Earth, Daniel found himself reflecting once more on the strange interplay between fragility and strength that defined humanity. He had endured the Academy's tests, navigated cultural misunderstandings, and now survived an emergency landing, all by leaning into the same stubborn resilience that had baffled and awed his alien companions. When the ship finally touched down on Earth, Daniel stepped out onto familiar soil with a sense of relief. The blue skies, the crisp air, the distant hum of traffic, it all felt wonderfully mundane after months of intergalactic intrigue. A small delegation from Earth's diplomatic corps greeted him, eager to hear about his experiences. Daniel shared his stories with a mix of candor and levity, downplaying his own role while emphasizing the importance of interspecies collaboration. "And the pain tolerance study," one official asked, leaning forward intently. "What was that like?" Daniel smirked. Let's just say it was eye-opening for everyone involved. In the weeks that followed, Daniel returned to his routine, but life was far from ordinary. News of his time at the academy had reached Earth, making him a minor celebrity. He was invited to speak at conferences, interviewed for documentaries, and even offered a book deal. Through it all, Daniel remained grounded. He had no interest in fame or glory. His focus was on sharing what he had learned about resilience, empathy, and the value of understanding others, alien or otherwise. As he stood one evening on his apartment balcony, looking out at the city lights, he thought about Zelen, Calix, and all the others who had shaped his journey. He didn't know if he would ever see them again, but he felt certain that the connections they had forged would endure. Humans, he murmured to himself, smiling faintly. We might be tough, but we're not so bad. And with that, Daniel raised his coffee mug to the stars, a quiet toast to the universe and its endless possibilities.